Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dan Franklin with SIS, and I'd like to welcome you to our next edition of the SIS Educational Series. And our topic today is Microsoft Dynamics SL 2018 CU4. And we are going to present the latest and greatest on Microsoft Dynamics SL. But before we get started, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about SIS. We are founded in 1996 in Duluth, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. We deliver business solutions that help project and service-driven companies unify their business processes and applications across the enterprise, thus delivering better visibility and efficiency. We at SIS are a Microsoft Dynamics partner. We, and as a complement to your Microsoft Dynamics SL system, we can offer the following services: that is current state assessment, business process analysis. We can do full requirements and fit gap. We are full service, which means that we can do software design, development, deployment, custom application development. We also have a full service and dedicated support team. We do both CRM and ERP implementations. We can work with independent companies, rapid deployments, or enterprise companies for hub and spoke rollouts. And we are familiar with both on-premise and cloud deployments. Before we go into our main content of the webinar, I just want to introduce everybody to the Community Summit, which is the user conference. It's going to be in Nashville, Tennessee, October 6 through 9. At the moment, it's still an in-person event, also with virtual conference options. You can go and we will send you in our packet a link for you to click and save on registration for the User Group Summit. And if you put the code in that you see right there, the Summit SL 150, to save money on your registration. So just for this webinar, I just want to give you some general information. If you have any trouble seeing anything, please send an email to info@sisn.com. We will have questions and answers at the end, and you can enter them into the GoToWebinar. There is a question area. Go ahead and enter them there, and we will accumulate them and answer them at the end. The webinar will be recorded and sent out to everybody. We also have attached some documents here to the webinar. You can go ahead and click them and download them so that you have to take home with you, or since probably just about everybody is at home, take with you the fact sheets. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to our rock star here, Jeff Suin from Microsoft, and he is going to move forward with the rest of the webinar. Thanks, Jeff.
All right, thank you very much. Let me get my presentation up here in a second, and then we will get going. All right. Let me know when you can see it. Can you see it, Dan?
Yes, we're good.
Perfect. All righty. Well, first of all, thank you very much, everyone, for taking time out of your busy time at home, more than likely, like me, to come and learn about what's going on Dynamics SL CU4. Just to let you know, we are I am 6 feet away from my computer right now, and hopefully you're being safe where you are right now. Hope all is well with you and your families, and you are doing well through this pandemic. What we're going to talk today about is SL 2018 CU4. We did release CU4 the end of last month, so the end of June it came out. And so what we're going to do is, you probably have heard part of this presentation before, but we're going to go through the standard information, life cycle. Where are we at in the life cycle of Dynamics SL? Where do you fit into there, and what should you be thinking about? Then we'll go through the 2018 and CU1 features, the CU2, CU3, and then we'll end on the new features that came out here with CU4. We'll then also have time to talk to you about things to start thinking about for CU5. And then I'll do a very, very high level. Well, hopefully you guys have already seen this high level thing before, so I'm going to skip some slides, but we'll go high level. What are some of these new things that I've been coming out with every release? What's Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate? How does that work with your company? And does it make sense for something you to start looking at? And then we'll end on the roadmap, and I've cut some things out so we'll actually have some time for some questions, because this presentation is getting very long and I want to give you some time to ask some of the questions that are going to help you out with your decision and hopefully moving forward with the latest versions of SL. So with that, where are we in the life cycle? So the first thing with the life cycle is where do we stand? So if you are in SL 2015 or earlier, then you are in something called extended support. What does extended support mean? It means that there is no longer any new hot fixes or fixes being developed for that product. So if you're in SL 2015 or 2011 and you find an issue, generally they're not going to get fixed because they're in extended support. It also means there are no year-end updates. So obviously with this year, there are going to probably be some changes to the way that we report things at the end of the year for payroll and such items. There will be no year-end updates available from Microsoft at the end of the year for 2015. Now, if you're on these extended support versions, you still can get support, so you can go ahead and connect with support, ask a question on something that's happened. You can get assistance that way. It's just no hot fixes. Obviously, if you're on SL 2018, then you are in mainstream support, which means if you do find an issue, we can look at that issue, and if it appears to be an issue, we can address it. And there's also year-end updates, which we obviously plan on having some here for the end of this calendar year. So where are you in that area? See where you're at, and then speak with Dan or your contact here to understand exactly what's the next step of moving forward and getting upgraded to the latest and greatest version of Dynamics SL. All right, so enough of that. Let's get into what's come out. The first thing I like just to show is what's changed as far as the interface. How do I know I'm on 2018? Well, you can tell by the new single color icons. We went from colorful icons back to single colors. We have the new Dynamics logo that's been out there for a couple of years. Again, there's how you tell if you are in SL 2018. The next is probably features, which you're going to see a theme here. You've probably noticed this, but again, we are on cumulative update 4. So we've had 4 releases since SL 2018 came out, and we'll talk about that later. But the idea is that we're constantly adding new features to the product, and we're constantly getting feedback on, hey, I like the new feature, but could you also, so you're going to hear me talk a little bit about some features and also talk about the way that we've enhanced them going forward by great feedback from partners and customers like yourselves. So what was the big thing? Well, the idea here between the voucher adjustment entry screen was the ability to segregate duties. It's Jeff's job to do the data entry, and it's Dan's job to make sure that what Jeff has done is correct and then move the batches forward in the process. Now, if you're on something prior to SL 2018, this would be something that you'd have to do manually. Jeff, just make sure you don't release that batch and so forth. This would work in the past. But what we've done now in SL 2018 is now when you come into the screen, if you try to release something, you'll get this little message that says, sorry. If you have turned on the approval process, you will get this message. Now, if you don't turn on the approval process, things work the way they are. We're not going to force you to start using it. But if you turn it on, it will be available for you to stop. Now, as a side note, I don't have a slide on this, but in SL 2018 CU4, we've actually enhanced this so you no longer see any of the options if you've turned on the approval process. So turn on the approval process, no longer will you see release later, release now. The only thing you can do is submit it for approval or leave it on hold. So again, kind of jumping ahead, but again, we've gotten the feedback that yes, we understand you guys are leaving those options, but make it even easier for the approvers and the people doing data entry to stop trying to choose something that they can't. So we submit it for approval. That's the only thing we can do if we want it to move forward. So we submit it for approval. We click on that finish button and it sends it out to be approved. Now, the status is a new status called W, which meaning it's waiting. It's waiting to be approved. It's waiting to be reviewed. It's waiting to be rejected if it happens to be. It's waiting right now. It's waiting to be reviewed. And again, any of those options approving or rejecting can happen. So how do I approve it? Well, there are 3 different ways you can approve this entry. 1, if you come right into the screen and you are an approver, it's going to know you are the approver or one of the approvers and allow you to start taking action. So what we're showing you here is you actually could open up each document reference number one at a time and approve and reject them one at a time back and forth. Very possible, but maybe a little time consuming. The option that I like better is at the header level. So I can choose to go ahead and approve the entire batch or reject the entire batch. Now, another side note is that if you are an approver and you're in this screen, you do have the ability to edit it. So for example, if I look at this batch and he sees that the second line item, that sub-account number is incorrect. Dan has two options. One, as the approver, he can go in and correct it. Or number two, he can go in and say, you know what, I'm going to reject it and tell Jeff that he needs to go ahead and make an adjustment and make sure he kind of learns from this experience. So again, up to Dan as the approver, but once he goes ahead, he can either enter a reason why he's approved it or rejected it, and then he can go ahead, take that action, and now that he's approved it in this particular case, then when it gets back to Jeff, it's going to look pretty much standard. Oh, okay, yep, someone's got an item in there, it's been approved. So then Jeff can open up and do the standard release now and release later. So that is the first way to do it. What's another way that we can do this? Well, we are very understanding that people aren't in the office a lot. So if you are out and about or not in the office and you want to be able to look at things, we wanted to be able to add an approval that you do outside of Dynamics SL. So the next one was adding approvals through email. So there is a solution called Power Automate, which we'll talk about, but what Power Automate creates something called a flow. And what a flow is an email that can be sent to certain people. Here we see the email came in, and it's completely customizable. This is what we put in our standard approval email. You can choose to add more detail to it, remove things that you don't need. But the idea is, can we give you enough information as an approver to know that you can come in here and take action on that? Now, if you are logged into your email and you happen to be on the network where you can get to the actual Dynamics SL Rich client, you can click on this link and it'll allow you to open up that original document, and you could go right on to the screen and do your approving. Or you can do it right online. So you can go choose to approve, put a reason why you approve it, put a rejection in, put the reason why you're rejecting it, and it actually takes those approval or rejection comments and Dynamics SL with them. So again, I don't need to be in SL at all. I can be right in my email and be able to take action on that. Now, the other thing that I really like about the email portion of it is that if I go in and I open up that email and I approve it or reject it, I don't have to guess, did I approve or did I reject it? I can actually go right into the email, and the email has actually updated. So it no longer looks like this, it looks like this. So now there's no guessing, did I approve it or not? Well, yes, I obviously did. There's no thing sitting out here that's saying, please take action on this. So it automatically goes ahead and puts that into there. Now, along with it, we all have to have an app for it. So the Power Automate solution that we're talking about actually has an online tool. So you could go to an app on your phone and run Power Automate and be able to do the approvals and view them at a high level as well. So that was the second way that you can do it. The third way is we created something called a Power App. And you've probably heard me talk about Power Apps, but Power Apps are great because I can actually create an application that interacts with my SL data that can do a simple task for me. Whether it's I need to look up inventory items, I need to look up customer balances, so forth. Simple little tasks, Power Apps can be created, and they don't require that you be an actual developer to understand how to make it. You can make it custom to your needs, deploy it, and people in your company can start using it. And that's where this came about. People said, you know what? I know that you're keeping track of everything that's going on with it, and I want a quick way to look at the history of the approval process. So we created this AP batch status screen, which really started off as just, hey, give me the status of it, and quickly grew as we started using it as people saying, hey, you know what, I like the fact that I can look up the batches and see who's been working on them, but I like the fact that I could probably actually approve them online too. Is that possible? And that's where it kept on growing and growing. So what are we seeing here? We're seeing the history of this particular batch we're looking at. We see that it requires some type of approval. When we click on that link, it opens up a screen and we can see exactly. For this particular batch, it needs manager 1 to approve it, and it also needs a approver test 2 to go ahead and approve it. So we've got both of those items set up in the system, and we can view that. Now, the nice thing about that is that now I can quickly understand, oh, yeah, that's why this is going on. It's waiting for approver 1 and 2. Now, we also show who those approvers are. So this happens to be their IDs. It's manager 1, it's approver test 2, and so forth. All that information is stored and shown on the screen. So I can see right now, no one's done it. So if I want to bother somebody, I can go to that manager 1, which would be a user ID like J. Suin or D. Franklin or something like that. You could see that information and let them know, hey, we're waiting for you on that. Now, the other thing we can do is we can quickly jump to another batch without having to go back out to the main screen. So let's say I wanted to look at a different batch that was in the system. Oh, and this one's actually going a little bit further. It's actually been approved by one and it's waiting for the second person to approve it. So when I pull that up, I can quickly see that it has been approved by approver 1 and it is now waiting on approver 2. Again, giving that historical, why is something sitting out there? What can I do to get these things moving forward? So on the left-hand side, we have different ways you can view the batch information, what's waiting for approval, what's for, second approval, all that stuff. So we've got all the sort ways to do it. But the other thing that people asked for is said, you know what? The way that Flow works is it usually sends out notifications at a certain time during the day. So let's say every day at noon, an email is getting sent out. Well, if I put a batch in afternoon and I want to get someone on the email to approve it, people said, well, is there a way we can kind of invoke and say, yeah, I know you already sent the emails for the day, but I want to send it right now. That little icon in the upper left-hand corner will pull up a screen that says, yeah, go ahead and send whatever you want. How far back do you want me to look? Look at the last 2 or 3 hours, find the information and automatically email it. Email those people who need to approve it. So it's a way for you as an end user to kind of invoke that approval process. And last but not least, it started off as a history screen, but then they said, hey, it would be great if we could also approve on it. So we've added the ability to approve or reject right in the screen as well. So yes, three different ways, but the results are the same. We're able to go in and set up the voucher adjustment entry screen, set up who and who needs to be able to approve it, whether it's one person or group of people, or one person or 2 people or 2 groups of people that we want to do it. In this particular example right here, we're seeing that approver 1, anybody in the group called approver 1 can approve this, and that basically means anybody's in that group basically first gets to it, they win. So first come, first serve. And then in this case, we've set it up that this has to be this person called web user 10, and obviously we're going to wait for them to approve it before we continue on. Nice thing too, this can be set up different for every company, or you can set it the same across all the companies, and you can easily turn them on and off as needed. So a big feature, a long time request of being able to, delegate duties, but also add some type of approval. All right, the next one came around, for those of you who are in SL 2015, you're very familiar with this interface for doing what we call possible value lookup lists. So now here I'm looking at a list of the active customers, and in SL 2015 we added this ability to search. So right now, if I typed in the value ON and it's looking at the column name, it's going to find any result that has the value ON in it, and it's basically doing what we call a contains clause to show me wherever it contains the value ON. And you say, okay, yep, that makes sense. Well, prior to that, that was always use something called begins with. So if you typed in the T, it would show you anywhere where the first value in the column is T. So you can see the very difference, but the idea behind it is that what we've added to 2018 is the ability to swap between the two. So you could say begins with, contains, you're not stuck into doing only one or doing other. So we've added it on the fly. You can change the way that that screen works so you can get to the information that you need. Now, when we came out with it originally in 2018, you could say what your default behavior is based on your user ID. So an admin could come in and set it up, and maybe we've decided in our company that it's always going to be contains or begins with. So we added this here. Now, put a little page or a little check mark on this. We actually have updated this functionality here in the later version, which we'll talk about shortly, that allows any user to set this without actually going into the user maintenance screen. But we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. The next are a series of items that regarding project. Obviously, if you are with here today, you are an SIS, you probably know that that is one of our strong points is the project area. So here are a few items that were added. The one was the ability to print invoices. You basically have 2 types of invoice. You have a preliminary and a final and a reprint that you could actually create. And the idea behind here is that people were doing preliminary or final invoices a lot of times. They just wanted to print them out to a file and they didn't want to have to actually print them out. So, but if you did it and you tried to do it manually, you'd be prompted every time, what's the name of the file, where do you want to put it, what's the name, all that other fun stuff. Well, we've added here the ability to print out to a directory locally, or maybe on your machine or on your network, or we could actually publish it out to a SharePoint, which we call DocShare in SL, or a SharePoint site for that manager. So if you wanted your manager to look at it, you could automatically hit that button and put the documents out there. Same for projects. You put them all out to one folder for the projects, you have that functionality. So that was new to 2018, and we did the same thing with preliminary as well as we have with the final. So you have capabilities to do both. Now the next one is around vendors. Customers forever have had the ability to be inactive. We want to inactivate this customer, but for some reason the vendors were holded, but whenever we had the ability to make them inactive. And the idea behind inactive is that we have a situation where, you know, there's a problem with Fabricam, we want to stop what we're doing with them. So what does it mean if we make them inactive? At a high level, it means no new purchase orders, no new voucher adjustment entries, and no checks can be cut if they are inactive. That's big. That's a really, really hard cutoff, but it's something we haven't had the ability to do before, so we're very excited about adding that capability to the product. So what does that mean? It means that they're going to stop showing up in your possible value list, so they won't be able to be chosen. Now, when you go to make a vendor inactive, we do some checks. So if you try to make them inactive and you have some purchase orders that are sitting out there, we'll let you move forward with it, but we're going to warn you because you might say, oh yeah, you know, maybe I shouldn't do this. And in some cases, we're not going to allow you because there are some values where you're using that vendor for a default value for something. And we will make you go into those screens and remove them as a primary vendor or default vendor, because if we make them inactive, it's not going to work. The system that's going to be relying on those fields is not going to work properly. So we request you that you remove them. Where does this impact? Oh, just a few screens. So all of these screens will react to you making a vendor inactive or active. Now, as a side note, one thing to understand about this is not a permanent cutoff, meaning if we're having problems with Fabricam today and we make them inactive, it does not mean that a minute, an hour, a day, a week later, we can't make them active again. So there's nothing, processing, no special thing I need to do. If I make them inactive right now, I'm not cutting them off forever. We can turn them on and make them active again and start using them as soon as we are ready. All right, the next enhancement was around projects, and the difference here is that hopefully you're very familiar. In our journal transaction screen, we added the ability to reversing and correcting batches and copying of batches. But the problem came around is that when you would reverse a batch that had to do with a project, it would make the credits that you put in general ledger would become a negative to the project, and a debit would become positive to the project, just because the way things are done in project are slightly different. So the code here did not reflect properly when you were doing a journal transaction, so a lot of people would not do it. So what we've done is we've enabled and changed the code to look and see, is a project involved, and make sure that that project is being updated appropriately. So if you ever shied away from that, know that we've enhanced it to work the way that you needed it. The next one is around project as well, and it's around basically around expense reports. Now, in a lot of companies, I know with mine, I am asked that whenever I do expense report, that I put some type of attachment with my receipts so they can see, yep, we have proof of what you're asking for to be reimbursed for. Now, what happens a lot of times is, yes, maybe it's a Friday, maybe it's the last day of the month, maybe you're getting ready to go on vacation. A manager can go ahead and approve something even if it doesn't have an attachment to it. And if that happens, then a lot of times it's up to the accounting person to go reach out to Jeff and say, Jeff, you forgot to put your expenses in. So maybe they end up emailing it to you, but we want to get this tied into this expense report. So the problem was happening before is that if my manager didn't approve this, it would be in a status that would be no longer allow me to go in and attach receipts. So what we've done is we've changed the code on the screen. So now it will enable at no matter the status. Those icons are enabled. You can go ahead and attach something, add your receipts, and it'll allow you to continue to move forward with your processing. The next is an old feature that we've updated for SL 2018. Maybe you're familiar with it. If you click on the home icon and the home page option, what this allows you to do is you can actually display a home page or a web page right inside of Dynamics SL. Right here, I am displaying that I've got customer source displaying inside of here. Maybe that's what you want to be able to get to in case you have a question or want to jump online to get some answers to some common questions. So that is available to you. Now, what we did in SL 2018 is we enabled that, we updated that to actually work with newer versions of web browsers. So if you're in an older version, it might not work on some sites. We've enabled it to work. And we also added a new feature. We've had this ability to be able to set up, what's the default home page for a user. We've added now a copy button, so if a admin decides that, yeah, I'm gonna let everybody else, we want everyone to start using maybe an internal site that we want people to be able to view, you have the capabilities. We can copy that to a bunch of users or a group of people. And again, this is geared towards your admins to make it something that they can easily deploy along their customer or their employees. All right, so we have actually gone through SL 2018 and CU2, and we're cruising right along. So we'll continue right along into CU2. So what were some of the things that came in CU2? Well, the first one was a great collaboration with a group of consultants. And what we did is we talked to consultants and we said, obviously Quick Query is a very popular and very powerful tool. And we asked some consultants for, well, what are some of the queries that you end up having to deploy at your customer sites? And they came back with us and said, generally where people are asking questions are in the project world, because project is very, very powerful, but for some people it can be overwhelming to understand the setup. And so we usually deploy these queries that help people understand how things work. So what are those items? One, if I'm about to run the allocation process, which is a process that we have to run inside of Dynamics SL, one, let me know if I'm about to run the allocation process, what are the things that are subject to being allocated if I ran it? Two, if I am done running the allocation process, what are the things that were allocated? Show me the results, show me the results with billing. So again, show me what will be allocated if I ran it, show me the results of allocations, and then go ahead and look at a billing transaction analysis, and then look at my financial transaction transfer analysis. Again, if I was getting ready to run a financial transaction transfer, what are those transactions that are eligible? And a lot of these things are good to see before, because you might see, hey, there's some things missing that I would expect to be pulled in here. You can make those adjustments before you run this process. So a big shout out to our consultants who assisted with us, and we're very happy to open this up. And again, this makes it more self-serve for the customers to be able to get the information they need to run their company. All right, the next one, a very, very simple request at first, which became very powerful after we talked to them. So basically someone said, hey, can I add the period post field to the release GL batch screen? And we said, yeah, you could do that. So that's a very, very simple customization. The field's available, go ahead and do it. And they said, okay, that's great. And because the reason why I want to see this field is sometimes people do data entry issues. So in this case, you see Jeff made an issue. He put it to 2025. Well, we know that's not correct. So we want to change that. So along with adding the field to the screen, we also added the ability to initialize. So we can go into initialize mode, open up the release GL batches screen, and it enables this field. So then I can go ahead and Dan can change that to 2004. Now it's updated to the right value, select it, hit the begin processing button, and now it's going to post, but now it's not going to be to 2025 anymore. It's going to be to 2004. So think about it. Yeah, in a simple one batch example, that might seem, okay, that's pretty simple, Jeff, why would I need this? But think about that. If you've got 10, 15, 20 different batches out there, being able to come here, adjust the period to post, and release them without having to open up every single batch one at a time and make adjustments is a huge benefit and a huge time saver. So we're really glad. Again, this was a request that came in from a customer and partner, which are most of these items. And so we're very happy to add that to the product. So this is showing you that when I released that batch, the actual correct period post was used. Now, another way this came from customers, but also came from me as well. Many times I am doing demonstrations on our web app feature, and our web apps is used a lot to do time entry. Now, one of the features of time entry is that you need to set up the weeks that you're working on in a screen called the week maintenance screen. Now, the week maintenance screen, generally before this, was just this grid below where you had to manually type in the week ending date, time period, fiscal period, and so forth. So you could be typing away, and if you're fat fingering or flying around the screen, you could type something in wrong. The grid gets a little bit messed up when you start typing in all that information. So I said, you know what would really be great is if I could really go ahead and create a screen on top of here that allows me to pre-populate or populate the information. So what does that mean? Well, I can put in my start date, I can put in an end date, I can tell it what type of time cards we're doing, weekly, semi-monthly, daily, whatever it happens to be. I go ahead and put those dates, I hit the begin processing button, and when I do so, it pops up a screen and it shows me, okay, based on what you just asked me, here's what I see that you asked me to make. So I can go in here, I can make edits. Maybe one of these is at the end of the month, so I need to change the salary factor, excuse me. So I can go in here and make an edit and change that. So, but it's really free, easy to do, and then when I'm done, I just click OK, and it's automatically added it to the end. So I didn't have to type them in, I didn't have to worry about did I write things correctly. Making it an automated process makes it easier. Now we see this popular with some companies. Some companies do this at the beginning of the year and generate it for the whole year. Some people do it on a month by month basis, so this makes it a lot easier to do when you're doing it that way. All right, the next project enhancement was around our end date. As you see highlighted, there is a start and end date associated with each project. The end date really and the start date were really there just for informational purposes, but we got a lot of requests that said, hey, listen, can you make it do more than just be informational? And that's why we ended this end date validation field here. Now you can leave it end date validation to none and it still will do nothing. Or you can set it at a project and task level. And let's talk about what that means. At a project level, what it means is that that project, if the today's date is past that end date, well then that project will stop showing up and you won't be able to enter your time or expenses against it. Oh, okay, cool. I put that date in there. I don't need to remember to go run a process or turn everything off. It will automatically happen. Now at a task level, along with having an end date, we also have an end date at every task as well. So maybe this first task ends in June, the second task ends in July, the third ends in August, and so forth. So you can have a task set up like that, and what will happen is the project will still show up, but the appropriate tasks will only display as long as they are active. So you really get the ability to really kind of narrow it down to exactly, and make sure the benefit here is you're making sure that people that are doing time entry and expense entry are only using the items that you want them to use. So again, great bit of functionality. Where does this impact? When we first initially did it here in CU2, it was only around time entry and expense entry. So you see the screens that are listed there. And we also have it in web apps as well. So if you're running SL 2018 web apps, you also have that capability as well. Now, the next thing that we added was around invoice adjustment posting. So if you're going to post an invoice adjustment posting, were the abilities that allows you to do your selection. Currency, biller ID, invoice cutoff allows you to go ahead and select those items, but the request came in that says sometimes we want to be able to select by specific projects. So if you choose project, it'll allow you to load in as many projects as you want or a limited amount of projects. Or you can select the invoice and adjustments and be able to choose them that way. So that's the capability that's built into the screen that makes it more flexible and ability to really narrow down the exact items that you want to process in the invoice adjustment posting. The next is for our service series people. We'll see one here and we'll see one coming in the latest release. This one kind of makes a lot of sense. If you are doing a service call and you get a call from a company and they say, we need you to come out and come and do a quote for us. It's going to be, we're not really sure what office, maybe they don't know the office, but they know that they want you to come out. So if you might start off creating the system and saying, okay, generally it's going to cost about this much, and you assign it to one specific site, and then you get a call back from them and said, hey, you know, it's actually not that site, it's another site. Well, we have had the ability inside of the service series, which wasn't allowed before, that you can actually go in and set up another site. So here's another address. We can change the address as much as we need while we're in that quote status, which makes sense. And things might change. You might have started one place and decided that it needs to be done somewhere else, or maybe someone got some more information about exactly where they need you to work. So as long as it's in quote, you can change that site ID. All right, so that takes us to CU2. Now let's jump into CU3. Again, if you have any questions while this is going through, please feel free to type those in there. And again, know that we're going to get there close here, and we'll talk about, and we'll be able to answer those hopefully live as well. Now, I said we constantly listen to feedback. People love the fact that we could do begins with and contains with, but they said the default behavior really has nothing to do with my admin. They don't know what I want. I'm the end user. I have all these abilities to turn on grid row lines and show grid row numbers and all that stuff. Can you add it to that dialogue? And the answer is yes. And we heard you, and we allow now that you as an end user can tell what you want that field to default to. That doesn't mean that you can't change it, but you can change that on the fly. All right, so that was a big, again, a good feedback and something that allowed me to move forward. Now, the next thing that we have is around the journal transaction screen. This became the number, the approvals for being able to do payables was number one. This became the second most popular request, is that we like the idea of what you're doing and breaking up. So Jeff does the data entry, Dan does the approving. They like that idea, so we added it to the journal transaction screen. So now you have that same bit of functionality. With CU4, as I talked about, even we've removed some of the drop-down options, so you only see what's available to you at the time that you're doing that. But I won't walk through that whole scenario, but just to remind you again, how can I approve a journal transaction? I can go right into the screen. I can do an approval through email or an approval through the app, the Power app that we talked about. So all three of those can be done, and we continue to move forward with that. So again, great opportunity, great option. We've gotten great feedback from people on things that they liked. We've enhanced it over the last year or so. But anything else that you think about around that, we're always interested in getting your feedback. And just to show you that it's real, it's not just made up, you can see now that there is an additional screen that you can set up. The same thing we talked about for the voucher adjustment entry and being able to set the type of approvals that you want. All right, again, we're listening and we're getting great feedback. People said, love the fact that we can change things in the GL batches. How about an accounts receivable with the ability to initialize? No problem, we can do it. How about in the accounts payable? No problem, we can do it. So we're building on top of ideas that people are liking, we're getting their feedback, and we're being able to address them quickly in releases. So again, thanks for those who are providing their feedback through their partners or directly, and we always look forward to getting these great ideas because, again, they continue to make the product even stronger. Here's another one. People said, you know, we love this end date validation idea. We'd like to actually extend it into some of the major AP, AR, and GL screens. We like the idea of being able to turn things off, which we like what you're doing inside of Project, but we want to also be able to do this in these other screens. So again, the same thing with the project level, with the task level. The big difference here is that these now interact as you turn them on with the journal transaction screen, the voucher and adjustment entry screen, and the invoice and memo screen. So turning on those fields, again, some of you might be looking at it, and just to maybe answer a question, you can and you always have been able to turn things off manually by coming here and turning them off. We're just taking advantage of this end date and being able to turn off them showing up in these different screens based on a date, not just based on when someone gets the time to come in here and turn them off. So again, great functionality that we've continued to get great feedback on and continue to enhance the product to meet the needs of you, the customers and the partners. All right, so the next area is around dashboards, and I think if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to skip this one because we actually have enhanced this, but you know that we've talked about Power BI, Power Apps, and Flow many times. I'm going to skip this purposely because the thing that's coming out here in CU4, we've actually enhanced this. All right, so CU4, well, the first thing that we have is one of the requests that we have is through the application inquiry reversal screen that's been out there forever. And the idea behind this screen is that you can reverse payments, prepayments, small balance write-offs, and credit memos. Okay, Jeff, yep, we know this functionality. It's been that way forever, so what is the request? Well, the issue is that people came to us and said, you know what, it's always worked this way, but right now, if I go ahead and I do a reversal, it's going to post to the current date and the current period. Now, if my correction was made in the same period, great, no problem. But a lot of times I'm not finding this out into the next period or down the road. So the request came in and we made it was that, hey, can we add a new checkbox that says, hey, I don't want to post to the current. I would actually like to post back to the original date and the post. Now it's updating those original items. I can rerun my reports. But again, it's an option. You don't need to use it. You can leave that checkbox off and it works as it does. Or if you click it, it's going to go ahead and automatically post it back to the original date and the original period to post. So excited to be able to have that functionality. Again, this came 100% through a conversation. A partner and a customer and I were talking, an event. Remember, we used to have events. We were talking about this and we continued on with emails and came up with this idea. I thought it was a great idea and got a lot of feedback that people said, yep, this is a great enhancement to the product. And those are the things we're looking for. What are the things that are going to make your lives easier? And we're all about that. All right, the next one is around a feature that's been around for a long time. The idea behind it is that you are creating a sales order and you're going to, you know that you need to order all the items that you need for that sales order. So you want to be able to tie a sales order to a purchase order. And the reason why you want to do that is because you want to make sure that those items that come in go right to the sales order and don't go anywhere else. You don't want anything else to be able to grab it, to use it for something else. You want a tie between the two. So again, hopefully you're familiar with it. Again, you can use this orders to purchase. Click on the PO button. It's going to pop up and you see highlighted in blue many different ways you can go ahead and create a PO. So you can either auto create with a drop ship, manual create the PO, but you can see I've already run the process just to kind of give you an example. So we've created this PO number 64, and if we open it up, you're going to see that the purchase for is goods for sales order. So think about it again. I've ordered this just for this. The inventory is just going to come in and go for that sales order. So, okay, Jeff, that's a great bit of functionality. Maybe I didn't remember that, but thanks for the information. What have you done to make this process better? Well, the problem comes in is that after you created that connection between the sales order and the purchase order, a person can actually go into the sales order screen and not know that there is a purchase order tied to that sales order line item. So a lot of times people can go in, delete the line item and say, oh, I don't care about this. And actually, the purchase order is just going to go along. But the purchase order inventory item kind of gets lost. It's looking for that sales order. It's saying, hey, where are these items that I was supposed to be shipping on? I'm kind of stuck here. And the inventory kind of sticks out there because you've kind of left them out on their own. So we went with kind of an obvious, simple request. If you try to delete a sales order line that is tied to a purchase order line, we're going to warn you and let you know. Now, we understand in some cases there's a reason and you can go in and delete the sales order and then go delete that associated purchase order line. We don't want to automatically do that. There might be a good reason for that. So the idea is that, well, if we come in here and I try to delete that line, we're going to give you that warning message. It sounds really simple, but someone just came to me and said, hey, listen, we're having a problem with people not remembering that there are purchase orders out there. Can you just warn them? Again, this way I can say, hey, do you want to really do this or do you want to stop? So you can say yes and continue, or you can say no and go back and say, oh yeah, I didn't know that. Look into what's going on and make sure you make the appropriate adjustments to your sales order and your purchase orders. So again, that's not rocket science, but it's a great suggestion for a lot of people that were running into a common issue. All right, the next is for my service series people. Another one that's probably a bigger one that I was working with a gentleman earlier, beginning of this calendar year, around something that he wanted to do in service areas, and we were talking about it. And then we kind of went off subject, and he said, hey, and there's also the ability to be able to, sometimes when I do an invoice, sometimes I mess things up or I don't correctly put things in, and I want to be able to reverse that invoice and then do a brand new version of it. So what he asked for is a button that would actually reverse an invoice. So you still need to run through the generation process to kind of marry them together and update things properly. And then he said, now that I've reversed it, I want to make a copy button so I can take that original line items, move them over, make the additional adjustments and move things forward. So that's exactly what we did. So we've added a reverse invoice. As long as that invoice has been generated and it's available out there, you can reverse it. So we can go ahead and click on the new button, it reverses it, and then you process it forward to marry the items together and move forward. The second one is because it's been reversed and it's open, we add this button to the screen that's only enabled in this situation that says, okay, we're available for you to go ahead and copy that invoice. So you can click on the copy, it lets you know, and then you can start going into your details to see all the line items, make the adjustments, and move forward with editing the existing line items or even adding new line items to this. So in the process, the gentleman I was working with did not like the way it worked. We talked about it, we came up with a way that works much better for him, and it makes it automated and less kind of behind the scenes creating things and a lot of double entry and so forth. It automates that process to make it a lot easier. So if something happens, which it will, you can quickly correct them and move forward. So that's a big one. Again, in a conversation with a customer, this became a reality here in CU4. All right, the next around our project is built kind of around the Power Automate solution. Now you saw me earlier show off this Power Automate that you can actually, go ahead and do email notifications and go ahead and approve and reject things. Another common one that came to us is I know that we've had built into SL the communicator module, but we wanted to kind of make it and build on top of this Power Automate feature just to show you the power of it, is we created a series of notifications that can run. One, you can set up a time card reminder. You can set it up that every day, maybe every Wednesday or Thursday at a certain time, everyone will receive an email that says, reminder, your time cards are due by Friday at 5 p.m. Please enter your time cards by this time. That's the generic text, obviously completely customizable. You can put whatever you need it to make it look the way you need it. But again, that's one. Two, missing, your time card is missing. Maybe a lot of companies like ours, you have to put your time card in every day. One of the things you can do is let them know, hey, your time card, you haven't started it for this week, so we need you to get out there and start working on it. Letting you know that it's been approved, that's kind of obvious. And then the last one on the right-hand side, time card status summary. It's a great summary that you can send to a manager. By the way, here's the people that have started their time cards. Here's the ones that have completed their time cards. Here's the ones that are missing. Obviously something you want to see and maybe run multiple times on a Friday to see where people are in that process. But again, obviously you can go into SL and look at it, but getting that email to let you know these are the people that are out there that are not moved forward with it is a great bit of information to be able to have. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is our Power BI dashboards. You've probably seen this demo before, so you know we've got a project dashboard. We've updated that dashboard to work with some additional scenarios that people were coming up with. Not to get too deep on this, but basically what we wanted to, so when you load the Power BI dashboard, it asks you proper things about the way that your business runs, meaning what's your fiscal, are you running on a fiscal year? What is it? What's the start date? What's the end date? For time card information, what's your start and end date for time cards? We ask you a series of information, and we had limited before this, but we've actually expanded to ask you a little bit more. And the idea behind it is that if you answer questions, the way that your company works, the dashboards will start showing you information that's pertinent to the way that you do business. And that's what we've done with that. The next ones I'll show the customer and the vendor dashboard. So with the customer dashboard, I didn't show you the last one. It's because we've updated with some newer looking graphics. Just at a high level, at the top level, you're seeing a series of ways to filter the data that's in there that actually can be hidden. So you can choose a customer or project or so forth, you'll see it all. But you're seeing, again, top 10 customers by balances. We're seeing the top 5 documents by balances at a high level. You can also drill into the details. Top 10 customers by sales, top 10 documents by sales, and what are the dollar amounts around them. So making it more graphical to capture your eye around these type of items. Now these are kind of great starting points for dashboards. Again, the benefit of this is that your Power BI dashboards can provide you the key information to give you high-level view of what's going on in your company. Catch your eye and see exactly over here, customer sales. We've got a large customer sales of CO70 that we'll look into and get more details. But again, it gives you that high-level view, and then you can kind of drill down into the details of what's going on with that. So that's the idea behind Power BI. We're very used to an SL looking at very transactional information. This allows me to look at it at a much higher level and be able to view the graphical high-level view and then drill down to get the details. So this was an updated, this was in CU3, but we've updated to make it look a little bit nicer. And the next, if my mouse will work there, is our vendor dashboard. So, hey, it looks pretty similar. The differences here, obviously, we're looking at vendor information. Here are your top vendors by balance, the top 10 documents by balance. Again, you get the idea. But again, these are things that are available to you. If you're on SL 2018, you can get these dashboards, load them into Power BI and start taking advantage. And because they're not locked or anything, they are completely editable and customizable to your needs. And that's the real big thing around Power BI, Power Apps, and Flow is that they are customizable. So where are we going next? CU5. CU5 is in the works. We have a few new features again, like we've been asking. We're addressing a lot of fix requests, obviously, and we are in a good stage right now because we just released CU4. We still have times for any new suggestions. In fact, I presented this recently, and I've already gotten 3 new requests for things for CU5 that will either potentially hit CU5 or potentially later. But we continue to move forward. And Jeff, so how do I make those requests? Well, I'd obviously ask you can go through Dan or the team here, but also you can reach out to me at Microsoft directly if you have an idea. Again, I got a few last week, and we're continuing to be in a stage where I can sneak some of these, or not sneak, but add these to the feature list so we can look at them. So please keep in mind, we are all in on listening to your ideas because they've been perfect for us. So just to bring it back in before we end here, the Power Platform, you've heard me talk about it. I'm going to skip doing any of the demos around this just because I want to leave time for questions. But please note, Power BI, it's that way to give you a graphical view of what's going on. It's not a crystal report where you're looking at transactions. It kind of brings them all together and gives you a holistic view of what's going on and trends in your company. Again, we provide one for projects, for customers, for vendors. Check them out, connect with Dan and team here to learn about how it can work for you. Power Automate, email notifications. Wouldn't you like to know when things happen? Again, Power Automate allows you to automate that process to let you know when things are happening. Power Apps, think of the situations where there are people out in the field that need access to data in SL, but you don't want them logging into SL. Creating a Power App that does a specific small little task is exactly why Power Apps are built. You don't need to be a developer to do it. All these things can be built and deployed inside of your company. Definitely connect with SIS and with Dan and team to understand how these can work for you. So again, I'm going to skip by these because I've kind of talked about them. You've probably heard me talk about it way too many times. But I want to skip by these. I apologize. You will have this in the deck that if you want to view them, but I just wanted you to know, again, we are continuing to invest in these, and we continue to see these of great benefit to our customers, but I wanted to spend more time on those other features today to make sure you got up to speed on them as well. Last but not least is our web apps. We continue to deploy a new version of web apps just about every month. Web apps are our pre-Power Apps and Power, all those things there. It was our way to access Dynamics SL remotely. The nice thing is it can be basically accessed on any web browser, so you can use any type of device to connect and view the information. Again, each month we're coming out with hot fixes or new features, releasing approximately once a month based on the feedback from our customers. Again, the focus on the left-hand side of the screen, you're going to see a lot of focus on project areas because that's where most of the people are accessing Dynamics SL remotely. But there are also other things for non-project users as well. Being able to run basically most reports in SL can be run remotely without any need to deploy anything special. You can do quick queries remotely. You can do some maintenance screens, all those things remotely. So that is built into the product. Again, if you want to learn more about that, connect with SIS or Dan to understand exactly what's available and if the web apps will do work for you. Lastly, the roadmap. This is the standard roadmap that we have for our Microsoft Dynamics products. Again, what's going on this year, we just released CU4 and we plan on releasing C5 at the end of the year, which we talked about, which will have year-end updates and some additional items. And the idea right now is that we'll continue that cadence going forward into next year as well. So hopefully this gives you a lot of great information about what's going on in the SL world. Obviously, we continue to invest in great new features. And to be honest with you, a lot of great feedback from partners like SIS and customers like you. So I want to make sure that you're involved in the game. And if you have any questions, I want to give you a chance to ask that as I go and throw up that last slide here. So with that, Dan, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Sounds good, Jeff. Hey, thank you very much. And it's great to see the SL 2018, the enhancements through CU1 through 4, covering all areas of the product, whether it's web apps or the distribution, project, service, financial. It's all over the place. So there's more and more reasons and benefits of upgrading to the new version. And great job on presenting that, Jeff. There are a few questions. So we want to see if we can get through a couple here. We only have about 5 minutes left. So a question back on accounts payable. When or if you reactivate a vendor, you change to inactive, is all the data history reactivated as well?
Yeah, so really good question. Literally any reporting and so forth is not going to be impacted by that. Literally what we're doing is we're just turning it off so they can't do any future information. You can't put in a new PO against them or anything against them. So we don't remove any of the history. We're literally just turning off a flag so they stop showing up, so you can't do a new PO or you can't pay them. But we're not removing anything out of there with these reports. Those things are still going to be in there. Now you can go ahead and change your reports to do that, but out of the box, we just more of a less intrusive, just to be able to stop from moving forward, but not remove all the old stuff. So good question.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Thank you, Jeff. On the reversal and copy on the service invoice, this question comes from Brian. Can you, when we looked at it, it showed just the invoice type, but what happens if you have a progress? If you have the invoice type of progress and you spawn 2 invoices off of a service call, does that copy and reverse allow you to pick which of the 2?
Yes, so with the reversals, we are working right now. We're just working initially. This is kind of version 1 of it, was to get out the door. It was just around the standard. I'm hemming and hawing, but I don't think we work with progress report invoicing right now. So I think it would only work if it was a standard invoice that went out that didn't have it. There's a lot of things underneath that do to get this to work. So kind of version 1 is to kind of do this, and I would love that feedback in the scenarios, Brian, that you have out there, that we can start looking into the future, because we kind of see this as version 1 to try to see the feedback from the service community as to whether this is providing them enough. I know this one customer will love it, but again, your feedback on other things we should be looking at would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I think the general population is going to really like that feature. Just I mean, progress invoices are probably more of an exception to the rule, but we've needed that reversal capability for a long time, because the service, there's a lot of traffic going on through that service module, and being able to reverse something quickly is a big benefit.
Yeah, and Dan, I look to SIS to give us feedback on that, because I know you guys are great in that area. So any feedback, any tweaks we need to make to it, we're ready for that. So let us know.
Yep, no problem. We certainly will help you there. For the Power BI dashboard, this comes from Julie. Do we have to have extra licenses for employees that don't have a license for SL?
Great question. So Power BI, Power Automate, and Power Apps. A lot of questions usually come around, what do I need to do to access? So in the Power BI world, there is kind of a way around this. There is kind of a desktop version that you can run locally to kind of try out the reports. So working with SIS and your IT team, you can deploy what's called a desktop version of it, which installs locally, so it would be probably on your machine that's connected to your network. You can load that, and you can load that report into Power BI Desktop to be able to view it. Now, what you can then do is, if you go, this report's great, or we've customized it and we'd like to share it with other people, you can then start publishing it out to other people. And when you start publishing, it does start requiring some of the licensing. Now, if you are on Office 365, a lot of times, depending on the type of business type of license that you have, you might already have access to that through your Office 365. Again, You can look at exactly what you have included in your Office 365 licensing, but a lot of times it is included. And if you don't have it, you can, if you need it, you can buy specific licensing just for the Power Suite, Power BI, Power Apps, and Flow, or Power Automate, sorry. So yeah, you can, so you might already have it for looking at things. A lot of times you can get away with kind of the free on-premise version of it, and then if you need to deploy it more, you can go look into licensing around that.
That sounds awesome. Thank you, Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're out of time, and there are a few other questions, so we will try and get those to you
please.
outside of the webinar. But thanks everybody for all of your time today. And Jeff, that was a great webinar. I think that the product seems to be really moving along, and we appreciate everything that you and your team at Microsoft have done for us now and all for all these years. Thank you very much. If you have any other questions, you can send an email to Debbie Peavy, dpv@sisn.com, or you can call our 888 number right there. Thank you everybody for attending, and have a great day.